Is this dark? Hang on. Are we live? Hi, Crystal. I'm having issues streaming from my laptop for whatever reason. So I don't know if the link is working, but hopefully it is. How are you guys doing? I wore red for this episode. But you know what's crazy? Before we get into, can you guys hear me? Hang on. Let me make sure I'm hearable. Can you guys see me? Colts the Conscious is live too? Oh no! She stole all my viewers. That's okay. I have a script and a plan for this whole one. How long has she been live? Colts to Conscious. It doesn't. Is she still live? Yeah, she is. Oh, she started 3 minutes ago. Oh no, I didn't know. Well, I guess. Dang it, we're gonna be competing. Hey, she knows I go live on Sundays. She did this on purpose. Just kidding. No, it's okay. Okay, let me just maybe I'll just make this one quick so that she can. I don't know. I actually don't know what I'm supposed to do in this. I've never had this happen before. I've never been live at the same time as her that I know of. So, sorry, the lighting's weird in here. The setup's a little whatever. Before we get into the video, I did want to say how weird it was that so we did that live stream for my little brother Jake, and we were collecting money for him because he had just left the cults. And I was trying to find out what episode we're on today. We're on episode 138, which means that Jake's episode happened to be episode 136. Isn't that crazy? We've had the episode 36 where we talked about my dad. That's my dad's number. He's the numbered man that took that number. And then randomly, my live stream for my little brother Jake ended up being episode 136. I just thought that was so ironic. Ironic? Is that the right word? Anyway. Hi, you guys. Let's say hi to everyone, and then I'm going to get into this episode. I watched the first episode of Handmaid's Tale, season 4. And I just wanted to get some ideas to talk about some comparisons because these next few, up until the women's retreats, we are going to be talking about women that came out of the cult, the women that are still trapped in the cult. We're going to be comparing. I found that it's probably a little more lighthearted to talk about the Handmaid's Tale. Just, I don't know. And maybe it's just an internal thing for me. It's really dark, all of the stuff that we're going to be talking about. And so I'm trying to find a way to ease into it. And I think that the Handmaid's Tale kind of helps with that. I don't know. Anyway, and it might even just be a comfort for me because all of these traumas that we're going to be talking about are things that I personally went through, things that things that I went through, or things that I witnessed loved ones going through. So anyway, I'm going to say hi to everybody, and then we're going to get into the meat of this whole video. Do you do your thing? You know, I'll always be here for you. Oh, thank you, Crystal. Hi, finally made it to live. Hi, Nikki. This is a good one. This is a good one to make it to. And the next few are going to be similar to this as well. And I did put a link to because I know a lot of you guys were asking me on Patreon how to donate to this retreat. And I have a link just to I think it's my Cash App. We have over 20 women going to this retreat. Over 20 women out of the FLDS, out of the order, women that have been out for years, women that have just recently left, a lot of these women have children. A lot of these women had kids while they were in the group and then also had kids outside the group. So anyway, we're going to be sharing that link for the next few weeks before the retreat. And then, yeah, no obligation, obviously. I always feel weird every time we do these donations because I'm like, give me money. But it's really just like a way for you guys to help out and a way for you guys to be involved. And Last time we did give letters out to the people who donated from, from the girls that were on the retreat. Anyways, so that's just an option for you guys. And obviously, I appreciate everything that you guys have done to help make this possible, as well as always just being so supportive. So I say this all the time, and I'm always gonna keep saying it. So you're not gonna get out of it. So, anyways, Christy, hi. Kendall, hello. Nothing wrong with asking for donations. It's for a great cause. Thank you. I really genuinely think that I get all uncomfortable about money because when I was in the order, I we're already talking about it. Um, my money wasn't my money. My own money that I worked hard for. How dare I ask for my own money, you know? So it's been 11 years now for me out of the cold, and it's still uncomfortable for me. The money topic is uncomfortable because how dare you ask for money, even if it's your own money. So let's get into the first episode of The Handmaid's Tale season 4, episode 1. It's called Pigs. Follow along. Just kidding. Before we jump into it, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the women. So we're going to be talking a lot about the women who have left and validating their experience, but I also want to acknowledge the women who did not get the chance to get out. There's a song called Mom's Got Work, and it's on The Handmaid's Tale in the third season, I think, where it shows Offred, June, finally having the opportunity to leave Gilead, but she chooses not to because she wants to go back and get her child. She's not leaving without her child. And this scene gave me such chills because I remember being in the cult and knowing women who were wanting to leave, knowing women, if they could have the opportunity to leave, they would, but there was reasons that they stayed. A lot of the times their children, they get to a point where their children will turn on them because they've raised them in this cult to the point where now these children believe this is God's kingdom on earth. So now if mother wants to leave, the children will turn on the mother. And so there's a lot of mothers who stay not believing in the faith, but don't want to have their children disown them. It's a weird place to be. And also feeling having to feel responsible for the damage that they put their children through. And then what are they going to do? Leave and say bye-bye kids, good luck, It's a hard position to be in. There's so many reasons why women stay. We're going to be focusing on women, by the way. I know that men are in the cult as well too, but these few weeks we're going to be focusing specifically on women. Again, why women stay. They have children. They feel there is no way out. There's nowhere to go. They've been isolated their whole life to this religion. So they don't know anyone on the outside. They may have family on the outside, but they have no connection to them because of their faith. The order does a really good job of severing the ties to anyone that could be jeopardizing their citizenship of their membership of the order. So even if they wanted to go, where would they go? Fear of hell is a big one. This was something actually that was very personal to, well, me and my mother. So she left on Escaping Polygamy. You guys got to witness my mom leave and then go back. One of the things that my mom struggled with when she left was everyone was trying to tell her that now that she left and tore her children out of God's kingdom on earth, she is now held accountable for bringing them to hell with her. So there was this huge burden of, especially when you're still brainwashed into believing this is God's kingdom and you're trying to leave for a better life, and you're having this battle internally with yourself. You feel the guilt of bringing the children to hell with you. It's not just you going to hell now. Now you're bringing these children to hell with you, and they have no choice in the matter. So my mom deeply felt guilt for that. There's another reason why women stay, and they have this belief. I've talked about this in my Handmaid's Tale video that I made, but there's this belief that if they stay, they'll have a bigger impact on the group and they'll be able to create positive change on the group, rather than leaving and not being able to have access to it, which I I have my own opinions on this. I disagree because you can only help as much as you know. And when you're in the group, you're so isolated from education on anything. It's kind of like a really slow upward battle. Whereas when you can leave and get educated on things and be able to grow yourself mentally, it's a lot easier to help yourself and then help others, right? That's the hard part though, is once you leave, you have a harder time getting access to the people. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that one in there. There's negatives and positives to that idea too, being in the cult, wanting to help from the inside. Yes, you can actively be involved and trusted in people's lives while you're in the cults. But how much is it worth, oh, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to help them, realize it's not okay to be sexist and racist and abusive and all these other things. But how much can you really help when you are not at the top of the pyramid? You never will be at the top of the pyramid, because that's the top is saved for Paul and his brothers. So you're down here, you're a pawn in the game. And yes, you can voice your stuff and you can try to help, but as soon as the leadership finds you as a threat, you're going to be tainted just as bad as someone who's left, right? If you're going against it, it's like you have to be very strategic. And I mean, maybe there are some people that have accomplished this within the group, but I think that you're risking your mental sanity by staying in a place like that to try to help it while you're drowning as well. You can't help other people from drowning while you're also drowning, right? How much can you help them? So it's like, get out of the water, stop drowning, go get a life jacket on, and then come back. Okay, episode 1, pigs, season 4. We're not gonna like, because I'm sure a lot of you haven't watched all of The Handmaid's Tale. Hi, Val. Val might like this one because we've talked about Handmaid's Tale together before. Thank you, Denise. So as I was saying, I'm not gonna get like super descript into The Handmaid's Tale because I'm sure that a lot of you guys may have not seen it and maybe like what you're talking about. So I'll just explain the scene and how it resonates with the order stuff. So one thing that as soon as the opening scene happened, I was you see like all these handmaids trying to like help each other out. There was a big war scene that happened, and it reminds me of the unity and isolation. So Handmaid's Tale versus the order. So the unity and isolation that happens in the order and out of the order. So while you're in the order, you do feel a sense of unity because this is your community, right? You have your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters, your 10,000 cousins, like everybody's a familiar face. So there's a sense of community. But you feel, at least for me and for a lot of people that I've talked to, you feel a sense of isolation, whereas you cannot truly be vulnerable with any of these people. You cannot truly trust any of these people because, like I was just saying before too, like as soon as they see that you're even a little bit wavering on your faith, that could be bad for you. You don't know who's gonna tell on you. You don't know who's gonna try to make you out to be a bad person. You don't know who really you can trust with these vulnerable thoughts and feelings, because it's also not a safe space for you to be vulnerable. The space of the order is not created for someone's individuality and exploration of self. It's built for people to be the robots to serve the leadership. There's only one role that we all have. So you find a sense of feeling isolated, even though you're surrounded by all these familiar faces. You feel very isolated because there's no one that you can actually connect with because you're too afraid to open up to any of these people. There may well be all of your friends that have the same thoughts and feelings, but they're also too afraid to share it with you for the same reasons. There's also guilt tied to it. Like I can't speak these things out loud because God's watching, right? So it creates this. There's a community, but it's a false sense of community, and there's a deep sense of isolation that you feel. But we're social creatures too. We long for this connection to people, and it's also sad because then you think about getting married, right? You're getting married to someone, you're sleeping next to this person every single night, and that trickles into the marriage. Like you're too afraid to express how you really feel, even to yourself. So you don't really know yourself, and neither does your spouse. Neither did the closest people in your life. There was a friend that I had, and I was very close with her in the order, and I actually opened up to her about a lot of the stuff. And I know she judged me for what I had said, And I know she tattletaled on me for what I said. She was one of the ones that told me after I left, we were like this, but after I left, she told me it's a good thing that you left and you left by yourself so that you can't drag anyone else to hell with you. And this stuck with me for years because I genuinely loved this person and I genuinely wanted to see her happy. But I understood that she now saw me in a different lighting because I'm now going to hell, right? So years later, she becomes a polygamist and um we snuck out. She reached out to me like years later and she wanted to see me and we snuck out to go see. Well, I didn't have to sneak out because I'm free, but she had to sneak out to come see me. One, because I'm an outsider, right? You can't go hang out with them. And two, because of who I am and my status as exploiting the order, then I'm like the worst outsider she could be seen with, right? So she snuck out to come see me, and we had a very deep, heartfelt conversation. The whole time she's like, "Please don't tell anyone. Please don't tell anyone. Please don't. I can't let this get back to my husband." And da, da, da. But one of the main things that I remember from this encounter was she was like, "Amanda, I haven't had." We laughed like we used to when I was in the order, and she was like, "I haven't laughed like this in so long. I don't have this kind of a connection with anyone in the order." And I was like, "What about your sister wives? You're so close with your sister wives. You love your sister wives." She's like, "Yes, but I can't. I cannot open up like this to my sister wives. There's no way I can even get half of what I've said to you to them because." And it was hard for her to explain it, but I obviously understood it. Like, one, these women are gonna hold it against you. Um, as much as you want your sister wives to be your friends, they're not your friends, you know? This is a structure that's not built upon it's claiming to be built upon love and unconditional love for the Lord and the Lord's kingdom and no jealousy, blah, 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 but it's all a masquerade. It's a toxic environment to where, the more you open up and be a real human being, then the more you're reprimanded. So I think back a lot about that girl and all the girls that I grew up with, and I think how isolated they must feel to really never get to open up like that to anyone. They do have a did you guys know this? They have a therapist in the order, but it's an order member. And everything that is said to this therapist, if it's a child, it gets trickled back to the parents. And it's like no one is safe. Right. I told the story too about how I had my diary and I eventually ripped up my diary and I flushed it down the toilet because people would go through it and then they would use those things in the diary against me. Little things, but there was so much shame and guilt and pointing the finger and you're a sinner, whatever. And then you become this, you have to close off any vulnerabilities. You have to show that there's nothing that they can pull at because they will. Does that make sense? It's also kind of like, how can you fully love someone and love and not judge someone when you're also judging yourself so harshly? And that's the environment that you're in. Um, so there's another scene. Sorry, this is gonna take a while. Dang, I gotta hurry because I actually have a meeting to get to. So there's a moment in this Handmaid's Tale where episode where they explain the apostates leaving. And they're like, "Oh no, that's so sad that these people left," and da da da. But then they explain that that the apostates took 86 children with them, and there's like this gasp. There's this like, "Oh my gosh!" Like we need to bring those children back home. Like it was possessive. Like they were so possessive over these children. Like the children were their property. In the order when a family leaves, they try extremely hard to get them back, especially the children. And they have this, I have a quote in here. It's like a save the children type of a mindset. It's like uh it's a twisted way of kind of an eerie undertone for breeding, right? Especially when there's young girls and they're like, "Oh, all these young girls." Like there's this undertone of we need to get them back so that we can get them in the right headspace so that we can repopulate the church. The evil undertone of the mother bringing the children to hell, again back to my mom's whole thing, like there's always someone to blame for bringing these children out, and it's usually the mother, right? uh we'll touch back on this topic in a second. So there's another scene where Aunt Lydia is being on trial for the handmaids. No, no, this is actually on the same topic. She's on trial for the handmaids escaping, right? And it's the same thing of like in the order as well. Someone has to be blamed. And so even if so obviously with the children, they're like, oh, they're children. Who's taking them? Like the adults taking them. They're the ones bringing them to hell. These poor children have no choice but to go to hell with their mother. Hopefully they can see the light, blah blah blah, and come back when they're adult, whatever. So there's a also reprimanding to adults who leave. Me, let's use me for example. When I left, they had to blame someone. Like she was influenced by uh they I don't know if I want to say names, but I remember who they blamed for me leaving. And I remember fighting back and being like, look, I chose to leave because I wanted to leave. But it's like they can't wrap their brain around a 17-year-old leaving. They can't wrap their brain around it like anyone leaving on their own, because I think that there's this idea of, and maybe it comes from the leadership, like they're like, how who brainwashed them more than I could, you know? It's almost feels like a competition thing, like who let them think for themselves? Who was it? Who encouraged them to have individuality? Because I know it wasn't me. And I know that they wouldn't have done this if they didn't have that type of influence. So someone, usually someone in the order still gets blamed for someone leaving. And then so this will happen too. It's such a weird thing because I told you guys this. I had my friend being like, it's a good thing you're going to hell and not bringing anyone else with you. So you have that group of people who basically harass you on your way out. But then you also have a few people that feel immense guilt, like it was their fault that you left. And now they have to meet their maker when they die, and they have to explain why it was their fault that Amanda left. So I had a few people being like, hey, I'm sorry I was so mean to you. Hey, like they feel this need of, I have to reach out and be nice to her so that I can feel like I did my part and can be forgiven for maybe being the reason she left. So there was one person who was kind of blamed because she bullied me a lot in the order. And so she was all the first time ever she was nice to me was when I was on my way out. And it wasn't because she cared about me, okay? This bitch didn't care about me. She just cared about her own placement with God, and if God was going to hold her accountable for sending me to hell by bullying me so much that I wanted to leave. Well, that's what was going on in her brain. Obviously, I didn't leave because of her. I left because of the whole thing. But my toxic trait is she had bullied me my whole life, you guys. And she was a lot older than me. She was an adult bullying a kid. Okay. So just to remember that when I'm telling you this, when she came to me and was like, I'm sorry for this, I'm sorry for that, I was toxic, and I took that moment to kind of like give it back to her for once in her life. She was like, I hope this, I hope that. And I was like, you know, you were the reason I left. Just to like mess with her because she had bullied me my whole life. She wasn't the reason I left, but I wanted her to sit with that because she did make it a little bit miserable to be there. Um, that's my one confession of the day. I wouldn't do that now because it's not honest, but um, I did that back then because I was really mad at her, and I didn't, and it was my one opportunity of like getting back at her for everything she did to me. Guilty. Um, so another scene where Lydia hears the commander call the handmaids, and I quote, sinful whores. And she corrects them and says, no, they're not sinful whores, they're misled, right? Misled by Offred. Another thing, we're like being brainwashed by another member. This is the part of most cults, and I think a lot of you guys who were raised very, very strictly religious, there's this such a like black and white way of thinking where you're either a sinner or you're misled. There's no in between. There's a right and a wrong, and you're either a sinful whore or someone's misleading you, misguiding you. We need to get you back on the right path. There's no room for, you know, oh, maybe this lifestyle is not for her. Maybe because she's been abused, or maybe because there's no room for trying to understand what's going on in the brain. All of the followers just want to say, put the label on the person. And I think it's just like the brain's way of just kind of being lazy and figuring it out on their own. Like, oh, this is what's happening right there, so we don't need to like look into it further. Either you are a sinful whore or you are misled. There is no in between, and there is no mercy and room for understanding. At minute 19, this is crazy. Minute 19, she talks about comfrey. You guys know how much we've talked about comfrey on here. She talks about Offred talks about comfrey being an old Martha healing tale and uses it to heal her wound. She's like she was shot, and so she's like talking about how they use all these different types of things to medicinally heal themselves, and comfrey was named. And in the order we did comfrey, but obviously comfrey, I will always yell this to the top of my lungs. Comfrey should never be ingested. I mean, unless it's like a tea, a small amount that you're putting into a tea, maybe. But comfrey is meant externally. And even in the Handmaid's Tale, they talked about that being externally. That's the purpose for if you want the healing purposes. In the order, though, they'll take clumps of it and they will blend it up and drink it. And it's been known to cause rapid growth of cancer cells. Why do you think a lot of order members are dying of cancer? They're getting a bunch of liver spots too, right here. I heard members that finally stopped drinking comfrey, their liver spots went away. So they're poisoning their own people by misinformation, which I had my own theories on that, but I don't know how true they are. So I'm just going to keep them to myself. But so they have in the order same thing. Like we had comfrey, we had garlic, we had cayenne, we had super tonic, right? We talked about super tonic before. It was a concoction that one of the numbered men's wives had made and sold in the order. And then eggshells was like what we would have if our teeth were feeling weak. It was like a calcium way to get more calcium. We find these remedies as well in FLDS culture, as well as AUB culture, as well as a lot of these kind of like cults that want to be secluded and away from isolated from society. And I feel I believe for me, and I feel deeply strongly that because of the way that the order was with all these random herbal medicines and refusing to go to the doctors, I still suffer from lack of knowledge about diseases, about cures, about why we need vaccines. I have I've gotten in arguments with people because of vaccines, and I genuinely am like I don't fully understand it, and I think that just when your whole life as a kid, like it was such a big bad no thing to go to the doctor, you struggle with swallowing that pill, swallowing the pills they give you. When I got my wisdom teeth removed, they gave me pain pills and they gave me distant. What's the other one? See, I don't even know. I flushed them because I was so afraid of what people had told me in the order about doctors and about what they're going to prescribe you and that you're going to get addicted to things and they don't actually have your best interests at heart. And so I had this whole black and white thinking of you know the medical field. And so I still struggle with it to this day, but I try to be more mindful and aware of what I'm, struggling with. Sorry, I know you guys are commenting. I'm trying to get through this as fast as possible because I have a meeting I'm supposed to be at right now. I'm supposed to be there right now. Comfrey, garlic eggshells. I still suffer from it. Okay, so I scribbled this part out because I don't know how fun this topic is. So if we have time, we'll go back to that. The continued misunderstanding of men and women. Okay. I love this topic. The continued misunderstanding of men and women even after leaving the order. Men still have beliefs that women are less. And they don't realize it too. They don't realize that they're still pushing this pancreas, this patriarchy idea and the cult mindset. Even after leaving, they're still stepping on women and not understanding what the issue is. And they defend that it wasn't so bad in the order. They invalidate the women and they fail to see that they are and were part of the problem. This trickles into women feeling. So there's a scene on this episode where the girl says, I want to hurt them so badly, Gilead, the men. Like she had so much anger towards these men. She wanted to physically hurt them. This is how I felt for years. Probably goes hand in hand with being invalidated by these men, constantly being invalidated. And it's not just strangers. These are men that are your brothers. They're your cousins. They are men that you grew up with. And they will not all of them did this, but there were moments where I had to argue what actually happened to me. And they're like, they want to invalidate it. And I think that it coincides with, they still believe somewhat that the leadership was true. They still have some form of respect for the way the order is. And it's because men do not benefit from helping women in the order. The structure is built for non-emotional men to be basically a king over their own kingdom, right? So a man who's helping a woman is jeopardizing his membership, and also he's going to get less, right? Because the idea of the order is meant to build men up and to tear women down. There's another scene where it's kind of shows just like the toxic behaviors of the handmaids. Even after they leave, they kind of continue the toxic behaviors. And this obviously happens hand in hand with, order people leaving. Not, it's not automatic. Um, So toxic traits, it's not automatic for you to leave and then just like cure yourself of all your toxic traits. So these toxic traits trickle through, and it's like you're fighting a war with yourself. So then the others get caught in the crossfades. It's hard to, and this is why this retreat is so important for me and for all these women. It's like to try to create unity after all of the trauma. And sometimes it's really hard to connect. It's weird because you have this connection with these people who left this cult because they all understand it and they've been a part of it, but you're all on uh different healing journeys, obviously. Like someone could be over here and someone's like still at the starting point, and or like healing is not like this, it's kind of like this. And so there's times where I could share my story that happened to me, and it will trigger someone out there. And I have had them get upset with me for sharing my story. This has happened so many times that my story has triggered them because it made them realize what was going on in there. And they had to like work through their own trauma by listening to my trauma. So sometimes, and I had to go through this, there was a moment where I felt very bonded to some ex-members, and then I found that we were being toxic order members again together. So I had to distance myself and heal myself because I was being a part of the problem as well. And then once you can heal those parts of yourself, you're no longer triggered by them sharing with you. You can have a deeper relationship with them because now you have a deeper understanding and a deeper relationship with yourself and love for yourself, so you can also love them deeply. But it's really hard to find that. There is a lot of people who leave and never talk to ex-members because they are like, it's in the past, I'm going this way. um there's another part of the whole like invalidating and getting traumatized by other people's stories, especially when like you didn't feel there. This happens a lot. You didn't feel like your parents abused you. You think that it was justified that they beat the shit out of you. You feel that there was justice, because you believe that that was you have some type of respect for how your parents did that to you. So when someone else who left the order starts talking about their parents' abuse and how it wasn't okay, then you were like they were just doing their best. So it's also like, oh, okay, so there's that part of the issue. And then people still praying after leaving, and other feels, but so it's like someone still has a relationship with God, still like values God, still prays to God, like thank you so much for everything you've done helping me leave the order. Other people feel betrayed by God, which is totally understandable. And that's something I felt while I was in the order. I felt God had forsaken me by putting me in this place and just leaving me to stew here. Or I even believed that I did something wrong in the life before, because they talk about God picking out your families before you come to the earth. And so I believed that God made me a woman in the order because I did something wrong in heaven and I was being punished because it was so severe, the mental abuse, the physical abuse, the turmoil that I went through. I wanted to die. And so I truly believed that God felt I deserved that, and that's why, because I was born there. I had no choice in the matter. So there are moments where people get offended when other people who've left still have this relationship with God. And I'm guilty. I'm guilty. I went through all phases of this because it's a really the healing journey is hard. It's hard to get back to a healthy place again. And I even talked about him in one of my recent videos, how I used to get very triggered when people would say, "Oh, I hope you find God, that Jesus finds you." Like I would get very triggered because I'm like, Jesus found me, didn't he? Um, but I feel like I'm in a very neutral place with it all now. But it was very hard for me to hear other people's like crying. Other people were crying about how much God had helped them, and it was so hard for me not to be like, well, where was he when I was praying for him? You know, where was he? Why did he help you and he not help me? But this was in the beginning of my healing journey. And I realize now it has nothing to do with me. It's all anyway, this is getting deeper than I needed to get. My point in saying all this too is to get into it wasn't just members believing in God, but members still believing that Paul is a good guy. There's some members who leave who still believe that Paul's a good guy, but the order's not for them. And this would infuriate a lot of people who witnessed Paul being a not good person. Like I have friends who have left who've witnessed Paul's abuse, Paul's basically temper tantrums, and then to have someone else tell them, "Oh no, Paul's actually a good guy. I do believe he's the prophet." Invalidates their story. There's a lot of people who will be like, "Nope, that never happened. That never happened. That never happened," because it's like it's going to alter their reality, and you become a threat. Does that make sense? Anyway, so this is a touchy subject because Paul's kids get really mad when I talk about this because they're like, "Nah," and they were like this in the order too. So I'm going to talk about it because it's something that happened, and it's not. I'm not going to sit here and not acknowledge that this is what a lot of people have seen and witnessed and talked about. Like you should be happy I'm talking about you to your face, not behind your back. Okay, I'm saying it with my chest. Paul's kids were treated better. Plain and simple, the leader's kids were treated better than kids that were not closely related. For example, in the order, if there was a fight that broke out, Paul's kids got off the hook, the other kids got sent home, you know? There was less accountability on Paul's kids because they were the leader's kids. And I'm not saying that it's all the kids' fault or the parents' fault. I think it's a mixture of everything. And the biggest thing was people that saw Paul's kids doing wrong things and then they find out that it's Paul's kids, they were afraid to tell Paul. They were afraid to hold the kid accountable because, oh, it's Paul. Paul's the man on the watchtower. His kids can't do it. It's like a subconscious thing that they're doing. So by that, the Paul's kids had less accountability on them in the order, and it made them kind of bring that mindset on the outside. So while I was in the order, I remember having a conversation with one of Paul's kids, and it was like, how come you aren't getting in trouble for wearing jeans at school? Like I got my ass yelled at for an hour because I was wearing jeans to the school as a teacher. And she was a teacher too. She also had earrings in. And I again got my ass beat. Just kidding. Just got yelled at for a whole hour by the principal who is the leader's brother. You cannot be wearing these earrings. You're an example to these children. You cannot be wearing these jeans. You're an example. Do you even want to have a job here anymore? Like made me cry. I asked her, "How are you getting away with this?" She's like, "Oh, I just do what I want." And I remember thinking, "Oh, you're Paul's kid." But no hate to Paul's kids. I am just pointing out Paul's kids were treated better. Paul's kids got more opportunities, and this transferred to outside too. They didn't understand what a lot of us went through because they didn't go through those things. So not all of them, but some of them would invalidate the things that we went through, and they would get upset. Like there's kind of a rivalry still with Paul's kids and non-Paul's kids because we'll acknowledge that yes, you guys did get treated better, and they'll be like, no, we didn't. We also had it hard. But by us saying those things was not us trying to invalidate, because I'm sure there was abuse, there was neglect, there was all kinds of things that did happen to Paul's kids. But you cannot ignore the fact that they were put on a higher pedestal than those of us in the garbage cans, rummaging around in the garbage cans. Anyway, I was linking this to there's a scene of the hierarchy after the handmaids get out. Miss Keys kind of abuses her power because she had power while she was in there, and it kind of brought it out. It's kind of a weird whiplash because a lot of oldest siblings have this too. When you leave the order, you still have this sense of like, you listen to me now, and maybe some oldest siblings out here feel this way too. Like when there's that Well, in the order, it was law above one another, you respect your elders. So the oldest sibling, always you had to listen to the oldest sibling. It was like having another parent. So that when you get out, you kind of still have that dynamic. Like the oldest sibling is like, why aren't you listening to me? Why? Well, we don't have to. We're not in the order anymore. We're all on the same playing field now. It's a it's a dynamic that only works when you're in there or when you're a child. It's honestly a dynamic you shouldn't even have though, because I could go on a tangent about this. Putting the oldest child as a parent role is not fair to that child. It's also not fair to the rest of the kids to have to be put on a lower totem pole, right? Like in our family, it was always the oldest kid got the front seat. It was like a hierarchy, right? Anyway, I could go on and on about that one, but we'll go on to the next thing. Reality of abuse settles in after leaving. So fear. So we can touch on this one. You don't realize how bad the abuse was until you get out and you don't have to be abused anymore. And you witness other families not abusing their kids. And I had the biggest, like the hardest, maybe like I didn't fully understand why at the time, but I was crying every single night. And it was when I was moved out to my adopted family's house, and they just seeing the dynamic of how the father treated the daughter and how healthy they were. I cried myself to sleep every night because I realized how unhealthy my family was. But I had this like loyalty to my family. Like, no, my family is so amazing. Even though they cut me off, wouldn't let me come home for Christmas, beat the shit out of me. But I had this like, oh no, my family's the best. Da, da, da. Then you see another family that never abused their kids, that never had the even thought to not have their kids come home for Christmas, to disown their children. So then you cry yourself to sleep every night because you realize, oh, so I was being abused. You don't call it abuse if it's something that you're in and everyone else is being abused. It's the norm. It doesn't feel like abuse. So that's a hard pill to swallow when you leave, is to realize, oh, it actually wasn't as great as I thought it was, you know? And I've had this argument with someone. They were saying, "Well, Amanda, what's trauma then? What's the definition of trauma?" And I was like, "That's a very good question, because a lot of things can traumatize you, right?" And so what if the whole world was abusive, on the same level of abuse? Oh, it's less traumatizing when you know everybody's going through it, right? How do I explain this? It's kind of like you don't know that you're poor until you're around the rich, you know? If everyone around you is poor, there's no, you're just happy because you don't really understand what you're missing out on. It's kind of a weird concept of seeing like your life could be better and then feeling the loss of something that you didn't realize was a loss. I feel like I'm spending way too much time on each topic. But this is why I'm excited for next week, because next week we're gonna just do the same thing again, but in other different moments. And maybe I'll save some of these notes for next week because I'm way overdue for my meeting. The last thing I do want to end this on is fear that, so when you leave the order, there is a fear that other ex members will blame you still for being a part of the trauma that they were in. So you know how on Cults of Consciousness she has a shirt that says, "I'm sorry for what I said to you when I was in a cult." There is a dynamic of people, and I had a few people that are coming on this retreat that told me that they're nervous about who's going, because they know that they participated in some of the trauma that happened to some of the other. For example, me being in the order, getting tattletaled on by my, let's say my sister tattletaled on me, right? And then because she tattletaled on me, I got my ass beat. Okay. So because of you, I had traumatic things happen to me, or you were constantly causing abuse for me. And you were this goody two shoe person that was trying to guilt me and shame me and into like falling in line. So, and they're doing this because they think it's for my greater good, because they're trying to save me and bring me to heaven with them, because they the thought of me going to hell and them never seeing me in heaven with them is so painful. So they're going to watch me get abused so that I will go in line so that I have to go to heaven with them, right? So it makes sense in their brain. But when they leave, they realize what they've done and they feel remorse, and they understand why there's a vendetta, right? Against the, like, obviously, like, I'm mad at you now because you caused all this pain. And so they finally have that light bulb go on and realize. And so a lot of the times they're afraid to socialize with some of the people after they left because they were a part of the abuse. They were a part of the trauma and they said things that were abusive and hurtful. So, oh man, there's so much that goes into all of this, but it's so awesome to see these. So there's so many of these women that they are nervous to be coming together and to be associating with each other after all of the trauma. And so, like last time we had family members who hadn't seen each other for like 10 years be able to reunite and talk about, the experiences that they went. And it was just such a cool bonding experience. There were so many moments where all the girls just huddled together and we got to laugh about experiences in the order and what we used to think when we were there and the whole heaven and hell ideas and what we believe now. And it's such a great experience to be able to have that. But there's so many. It's not black and white. It's not you're in a cult, now you're out. You're in, you were brainwashed, and now you're out and you're healthy. There's this whole healing journey, and we go through this even just in families of abuse, not even in a cult. We go through this in strict religious households. We go through this in, you know, households where, and it could even not be religious, but the fact that your parents could have been narcissists. It could have been a household where we were not able to be our own individual selves. We were being forced to fit this mold that we were not meant to be. And so it causes a lot of trauma and it causes you to do things and say things and be things that you don't genuinely feel. I mean, you may believe that you feel them at the time, but they're not genuine to you. It's just like a rehearsed thing that you feel that you need to be saying and doing because that's what's been fed to you. So, where am I going with this? My whole point is I'm really grateful that we can have this retreat and have it's 20 plus women going. Like, that's crazy. 20 plus women getting together to be able to talk about, I mean, not even just talk about anything, just to be and coexist together and feel a sense of community. So I'm grateful for all of your guys' donations that have been able to help make this possible. All of the support that you guys have given, not only me, but my little brother Jake, my, Jacob Swanson, Priscilla Tucker. Like I could name so many that you guys have been so kind and so supportive and just like created this community too for all of us. And I genuinely think that so many order people watch and see how supportive you guys, the outsiders, right? The bad people out here, how supportive you guys have been to me. And it makes them have hope that they will have something out here. So there's so much positive change that you guys maybe have no idea how much you affect just your comments and how kind you have been to each other, to me, to everyone that's come out. And I just wanted to say I really appreciate you guys. If you do feel the inkling to donate, I do have the information in the description box down below. But thank you guys so much for just being your awesome authentic self. I feel like I've ignored you this whole time. I'm so sorry. Let me just read a few comments and then I gotta go. I had to go like an hour ago. Hi Casey. Is Jake ever going to go on a live with you? I have talked to him about it. um I will say it is hard for fresh members to leave. Jacob Swanson was like the one case where it was someone who freshly left and wanted to go straight to the YouTube and tell his story. That never happens. A lot of the times, people that leave are still struggling to find themselves. They're still struggling to, they're in survival mode. So to be like, hey, you want to go on my YouTube channel and have the whole order watch you and judge you, it's a little too much for them. So I find that people that want to be on my channel have a little bit more of they just can handle it a little more. I I never want to pressure anyone who's just left to broadcast their whole story, you know. So if he when he comes around, I know that he's so strong and he's healing at a really rapid rate. So I think that you guys will see him very soon. Um I just know that he's had a lot of the same stuff that I had when I left, like people just really trying to bring him down. People that he thought loved him so much, just really tearing him down because of his choices of leaving and choosing himself. So I really do hope very soon that he can come on here and feel the love from you guys. I know he already does feel it because he's gotten your guys' messages and he's getting cash sent to him right now from a lot of you guys with their messages. So, but yeah, love you guys. Love you, Patty. Hi, Cody. Just finally caught alive. You greatly inspire me and help me in my own life. Thank you for what you do. Oh, thank you, Brianna McGuire. Hi, Jenna. That's great. I think he's Eskel's twin. I know. They both, Eskel and Jake, were born with like the bright blonde hair. Comes from, I think, my mom's side of the family. But all right. Love you guys. Next week, we will be diving into the next episode. We are going to be coming out with episodes with Priscilla, and it's going to be kind of just, we're having a very woman presence on this channel right now, up until we do the Malibu retreat, the women's retreat. So just stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye. How do I turn this off? I always forget because I'm not used to doing it on this laptop. Okay, love you guys. Bye.